Imagine you've just harvested a mountain of apples from your orchard. For the first time, you're taking them to be loaded on a steamboat to bring them to the Big Apple, New York City. You weren't sure just what to expect coming from your peaceful, remote farm upstate. And to be honest, you found the steamboat ride exhilarating, albeit noisy. But that's nothing compared to the city itself. It's big, it's noisy, it's smelly, it's crowded, and it's hard to see and breathe because of all the smog in the air. What is this place, and why is it like this? Today, we'll be learning about the Industrial Revolution. Our learning objectives today are to define the Industrial Revolution and summarize its beginnings in the United States, define the factory system, and summarize how it changed working life in the United States, and describe ways in which urban living changed life for many Americans during the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a shift from working mostly by hand to relying on machines to accomplish tasks. It led to an increase in production of goods. Rather than using human or animal labor for all tasks, like moving around, people looked for ways to use power generated by water or steam. Better output on farms freed up workers to move into other career fields. Specifically, the growth of cotton production promoted the development of a textiles industry in the North. Before the Industrial Revolution, raw cotton was purchased by women who used spinning wheels in the home to create thread for their own personal use. Extra thread could be sold to a weaver for money. This type of work is called the cottage industry, or the domestic system. This way, individuals do work in their homes and sell their product to someone else. Homemade thread was sold to weavers who used looms to make cloth. But in the 18th century, many machines for spinning cotton into thread, like Richard Arkwright's water-powered spinning frame, were invented in Great Britain. Although it was illegal to bring these machines outside the country, Samuel Slater memorized the plans for Arkwright's water frame and snuck onto a boat headed for America. He opened a water-powered factory in Rhode Island and ran a very successful business. Slater's success using machines caught on, jump-starting the Industrial Revolution in the United States and prompting others to begin using machines to find better ways of making things. Many fields, like ironworking, glassmaking, sewing, and sawing wood, all began incorporating the use of water or steam-powered machines to complete work more efficiently and reliably. Trains were also invented to help move people, products, and fuel around the country, and the telegraph allowed people to communicate more quickly. Altogether, these changes completely changed the way that Americans lived and worked. Frances Cabot Lowell brought together spinning and weaving under one roof, buying raw cotton and selling cloth. This factory system, or bringing many workers, materials, and tools together in one place, hurt cottage industry producers of thread and cloth. And it brought many wage workers into factories, moving them away from work in their homes. Many people, like women and children, sometimes younger than 10 years old, who had not been in the workforce previously, were hired by factory owners as well. Working conditions in most factories were poor. Wooden buildings, full of cotton dust, were hard on the lungs and easily caught fire. The floors of water-powered factories were often slippery and hazardous. The machines were very dangerous to operate. Workers' hands, clothes, or hair were sometimes caught in them, leading to many injuries. All of these were especially important considerations for workers that worked 12 or more hours a day. Managers in factories constantly looked for ways to make workers more productive, like locking doors so they couldn't leave the factory floor until their shift ended. Many workers held strikes, halting production and causing the owners to lose money. Working together helped them advocate for improvements in pay and working conditions. They also formed workers' unions, who organized strikes but also petitioned the government to make laws requiring business owners to make changes. Unions' efforts led to a 10-hour workday in the 1840s and later prevented children from working, ensuring fair pay and safer working conditions in factories. Cities were the perfect place for factories. There were many people that could work, moving rivers that could power machines, and railroads often led through them. Through the creation of factories and transportation networks, more and more people left rural farms and moved to cities looking for work. In 1800, only 6% of Americans lived in cities. By 1880, over 30% were urban dwellers. Living conditions in cities were poor in the 19th century, before they had access to running water. There were no underground sewers taking waste outside cities. That meant no toilets taking waste outside of homes. In many places, people put their trash and their fecal waste out on the side of the street, hoping that someone would carry it away. The roads throughout were dirty and smelly and home to lots of rats and flies. And they were crowded with people, buying, selling, and transporting goods. Many poor people lived in tenements, or small, cramped, crowded apartment buildings. In many cases, they lacked basic safety features like fire escapes. It was difficult for tenants to get clean water and food. Factories often burned coal to create steam power. Smoke billowed out of the top of smokestacks and polluted the air. The collection of hundreds of thousands of people and their waste led to many diseases, which spread quickly. But there was not much doctors could do about illness because antibiotics hadn't been discovered yet. There were often no police forces or fire departments either. Can you imagine living in these conditions? Thank goodness that city governments provide fair and affordable access to these sorts of things now. Cities are much cleaner and safer than they once were. On the other hand, small business owners found many customers in cities, which led to the rise of a middle class who now had more free time and were near many other people. Leisure activities like going to the theater, boxing, bowling, baseball, and gambling became very popular in cities. And many middle-class people finally had time to read, educate themselves, and get into local politics. This had an impact on politics because they were more likely to vote for populist candidates like Andrew Jackson and James Polk. The early 19th century was a period of great change in the United States. In part, that change was due to the use of machines for work. A textiles industry was the first to develop in the North, as Samuel Slater brought spinning machines to Rhode Island. Francis Cabot Lowell built on this with the factory system, bringing many workers and machines together under one roof to increase efficiency. Working conditions in early factories were very poor, leading workers to form unions, strike, and petition the government to make child labor laws and ensure safer working conditions. And many Americans moved to cities. Living conditions were also poor because of a lack of city services like sewage and sanitation, good health care, police, and fire services. But urban living also led to the rise of a middle class and many new leisure activities for people wanting to relax and have fun, provided they could afford it. Next time, be on the lookout for lots of new Americans hailing from all over Europe and around the world. Until then, Auf Wiedersehen, historians, and remember to always be clever.
Hey, hey.